The thing about knocking on someone's car window at 8:47 on a Tuesday night is that you only get one chance to not ruin everything. You either say the right thing or you become the person who made it worse. I was standing in a half-empty parking garage in downtown Denver with my laptop bag over one shoulder and my car keys in my hand, and I had exactly 3 seconds to decide what kind of man I was going to be. I knocked anyway. My name is Colin Mercer. I was 34 years old, a senior account strategist at a mid-sized marketing consultancy called Trident Group. And for the past 2 years, the single most consistent obstacle to my professional life had been a woman named Rachel Holt. Rachel was 32, the director of client partnerships, sharp as a paper cut, and twice as quiet about it. She dressed like she had somewhere better to be. She presented like she had already read the room before she walked in. She had a way of disagreeing with you that made you feel like you had somehow disagreed with yourself. We competed for everything: the Callaway account, the Brennan Group pitch, the Hartwell rebrand that had consumed 6 months of both our lives and ended with management splitting the credit down the middle in a meeting where neither of us looked at each other. People at Trident called us the storm system. If Rachel was in the conference room, I came in through the side door. If my name was on the agenda, she requested 5 more minutes to prepare. We were not enemies, exactly. Enemies implied something personal. We were two people who had been assigned opposite corners of the same ring and had gotten very good at throwing punches. That was the story I had been telling myself for 2 years. That Tuesday night in the parking garage taught me it was the wrong story entirely. I had stayed late because the Fletcher proposal was due Thursday, and my draft still needed a section I couldn't make sound like anything other than panic dressed in bullet points. The office had emptied out by 7. The cleaning crew came through at 8. By 8:30, it was just me, the hum of the building's ventilation system, and the particular silence of a workspace that had been abandoned by people with healthier habits. I took the elevator down to the garage. My car was on level 2. Rachel's car was also on level 2, a navy blue Volkswagen parked 3 spots down from mine, which I knew because I had spent 18 months unconsciously tracking every detail about her out of pure competitive instinct. I knew she drank black coffee, no sugar. I knew she used a purple pen in every meeting, never a black one. I knew her car. I did not know, until that night, what she looked like when she was falling apart. She was in the driver's seat. The engine was off. The overhead light in the car was on. The kind that comes on automatically when a door gets opened and then closed too gently to fully latch. In that thin yellow light, I could see her. Shoulders folded forward. One hand pressed flat against the steering wheel, like she was bracing against something. Her head was down. I almost kept walking. A decent, professional, self-preserving man would have kept walking. He would have told himself it was none of his business. He would have remembered the Hartwell meeting, the Callaway emails, every conference room moment where Rachel had systematically, elegantly, and without visible effort made his best work feel like a rough draft. He would have gotten in his car and driven away, and texted a friend about it later like it was an interesting observation. I got 3 steps past her car and stopped because she was crying. Not the polished, composed kind of crying where you dab at the corners and breathe through your nose. The real kind. The kind where your whole body shakes slightly and you think you're hiding it, but you're not because the parking garage is quiet and empty and the sound carries. I turned around. Here is what I did not do. I did not knock on the window with the energy of a man who had just won something. I did not smile. I did not make a face that said, I am storing this for later. I stood beside her car for 2 full seconds and asked myself honestly whether I was about to knock because I cared or because I was curious. Because there is a version of a man who sees his rival in a weak moment and files it away. I did not want to be that version. I knocked once, soft, not urgent. Rachel looked up. Her face did the thing faces do when they're caught somewhere they didn't plan on being seen. Shock first, then a fast, instinctive reach for composure, then something else when she realized it was me specifically. A particular kind of horror. The kind that says not you, anyone but you. She lowered the window 2 inches. Her mascara had tracked down in 2 thin lines beneath her left eye. Her jaw was tight. She looked like a woman who had just made the decision to be furious instead of embarrassed, and I respected that immediately and completely. Mercer, she said. Holt, I said. We stared at each other. The garage hummed. Somewhere above us, a car door slammed on level 3. I'm fine, she said. I looked at her. I didn't say anything to contradict it. I just looked, and she knew I wasn't going to pretend I hadn't seen what I'd seen. Do you need anything? I asked. She blinked. That was it. That was the one thing. Not a joke. Not a power move. Not I never thought I'd see this from you, or should I tell HR you look like a flight risk? Just the plainest, most ordinary sentence I had ever said in my professional life. Do you need anything? Rachel looked at me for a moment that lasted long enough to be uncomfortable for both of us. Then something in her shoulders dropped. Not collapsed. Dropped, like she had been holding them at the wrong height for a very long time. There's a coffee place on Morrison that's open until 10, I said. She stared at me like I had suggested something in a foreign language. Or not, I said. I just have a proposal section that reads like it was written by a man who has given up on prepositions, and I could use 15 minutes somewhere that isn't this garage. Rachel looked at the steering wheel, then back at me. You're buying, she said. Obviously, I said. She fixed her mascara in the rearview mirror with the kind of efficiency that told me she had done it before in worse places. Then she got out of the car. We did not walk to the coffee shop together in a way that suggested anything. We walked like two people who happened to be going in the same direction and had made a temporary, extremely conditional truce about it. The coffee place on Morrison was the kind of spot that survived on regulars and late hours. Exposed brick, jazz through one low speaker, a chalkboard menu that hadn't changed since probably 2019. We ordered at the counter. Rachel got black coffee, no sugar, which I already knew. She noticed that I didn't ask. She didn't comment on it. We sat at a small table near the window. For about 45 seconds, neither of us said anything. The jazz filled the gap. A couple near the door laughed about something. Rachel wrapped both hands around her mug and stared at the table with the focused expression of someone deciding how much of themselves to hand over to a person who was not supposed to have any of it. Daniels killed the Hargrove partnership, she said. My stomach dropped. Hargrove was a 3-year client relationship Rachel had built almost entirely on her own. The Trident leadership had been edging around it for 2 quarters. I had heard rumors. I hadn't known it was final. When did they tell you? I asked. An hour ago. She pressed her lips together, via email, while I was in the building, 2 floors below them. I said nothing because there was nothing useful to say. That was a particular kind of corporate cowardice, the kind that dressed itself up as efficiency. Send it in writing. Let HR track the paper trail. Do not make eye contact with the person who built the thing you just demolished. Rachel looked up at me. You didn't know. No, but you'd heard something. Rumors, I said. Nothing I could have told you. She held my gaze like she was running a calculation. Then she nodded once, accepting that. Daniels asked me to stay on in an advisory capacity during the transition, she said. He said it like he was doing me a favor. What did you say? The corner of her mouth moved. Not quite a smile. More like something that had once been a smile and had learned better. I thanked him professionally and left his office before I said the rest of it. Smart. I almost wasn't. She set her mug down. That's what the parking garage was about. I understood that. The parking garage had been the place where she let the rest of it out. The part she was too disciplined to say in the building, too private to say in front of anyone who mattered, too proud to take home, without somewhere to put it first. I had a similar spot. Mine was the drive home on Route 70, where I turned the radio off and just existed with whatever the day had made of me. Everybody has a parking garage. Rachel's was just the literal version. You built that partnership, I said. She looked at me. Don't do that. I'm not doing anything. It's a fact. I watched you build it for 3 years. I wrapped my hands around my own mug. I was jealous of it, for the record. I told myself your retention model was aggressive, but I was jealous. Rachel stared at me. That's a strange thing to say, she said. It's a strange night. She was quiet for a moment. The jazz shifted into something slower. Daniels told me you advocated for keeping it, she said carefully. 6 weeks ago in the quarterly review. He mentioned it in the email, actually. Said the decision stood despite internal support for the account. I had. I had made the argument on the merits. Not because of Rachel, or so I had told myself at the time. Because losing Hargrove was going to create a gap in the portfolio that would take 2 years to refill, and I had run the numbers, and the numbers had been uncomfortable. I would have told you, I said, but telling my work rival that I defended her account in a leadership meeting felt like exactly the kind of thing that turns into a story people tell at my expense. Rachel made a sound, not a laugh, but adjacent to one. So instead, she said, you said nothing, and I spent 6 weeks assuming you were either uninvolved or quietly pleased. Uninvolved, I said. For what it's worth. It's worth something. She looked out the window. The street outside was wet from earlier rain, the streetlights pulling long gold streaks across the pavement. I want to ask you something. Okay, why did you knock on the window? I had been waiting for that. I had been turning it over since the moment my knuckle hit the glass. The honest version was simple and slightly embarrassing, which meant it was probably the right one. Because I walked past and thought about whether I was the kind of person who keeps walking, I said. And I didn't like the answer. Rachel looked at me for a long time. Her face was unreadable in the way it always was in meetings, except it wasn't exactly the same. In meetings, that expression was strategy. Right now, it was something quieter than that, closer to relief. We've wasted a significant amount of time, she said finally. The Callaway account alone, I agreed. I had good reasons not to trust you. So did I. Some of them were probably manufactured. She said it like it cost her something. I think someone above us had reasons to keep us from comparing notes. I had thought the same thing for about 8 months. There were too many redirected conversations, too many contradictory briefings, too many moments where I had been told Rachel's position on something that turned out not to be her position at all. It had the particular fingerprints of a management style that confused competition with productivity. We should talk about that, I said. Not tonight. No, she agreed. Not tonight. She finished her coffee. I finished mine. We sat for another few minutes without filling the silence, which was new. Every silence between us before that night had been loaded. Tactical. This one was different. It was just two tired people at a table in a coffee shop on a Tuesday, letting the day finish. When she pulled on her coat, she paused. The section you said reads like a man who gave up on prepositions, she said. What's the core argument? I told her in 2 sentences. She thought about it for exactly 4 seconds. Lead with the retention data, not the acquisition projection. You're building the case backwards. I stared at her. She picked up her bag. Don't make it weird, Mercer. It's a structural note. It's a correct structural note. Most of mine are. She almost smiled. Thank you for the coffee. Thank you for not leaving me in the garage, I said. She tilted her head slightly. You were in the garage, metaphorically. For the first time that night, Rachel Holt laughed. A real one. Not the professional, measured version she deployed in presentations when a client said something mildly amusing. This one was unplanned and slightly startled, like it arrived before she could decide whether to let it. It did something irreversible to my chest. We walked back to the garage in the same direction we had come from, and this time the silence between us had a different texture entirely. Not combative, not careful, just present. At her car, she turned. Fletcher proposal, she said. If you want a second set of eyes on the retention framing before Thursday, I have a gap tomorrow at 4. I looked at her. Rachel Holt, who had spent 2 years treating my proposals like she was doing forensic accounting, was offering to help. I'll bring coffee, I said. Black, she said. No sugar. I know, I said. She noticed again. This time she let it sit there between us for a half-second longer than necessary. Then she got in her car. The door caught properly this time. I watched the taillights back out and disappear up the ramp. I stood in the parking garage for a moment longer than I needed to. I had walked in that night with a proposal I couldn't finish and a professional rivalry I had long since stopped examining too closely because examining it felt dangerous in a way I couldn't name clearly. I was walking out with a second opinion at 4 o'clock, and the memory of Rachel Holt laughing in a coffee shop on Morrison Street like she had forgotten she was allowed to. I did not ruin the Fletcher proposal that Thursday. Rachel's note about the retention framing was exactly right, which I told her at 4 o'clock the following afternoon over coffee in a conference room with the blinds half down. And she said, of course it was. And I said, obviously. And we looked at each other across the table and both understood that something had shifted. And neither of us was going to be the first to name it in a fluorescent lit room on a Wednesday. Some things need a parking garage and a rainy street and a coffee shop and a little time before they become the right words. We got there eventually. What would you have done if you caught your biggest work rival crying alone in a parking garage at night? Would you have kept walking or would you have knocked on the window? Tell me in the comments. If this one hit right, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.